For nearly 400 years, farmers across an entire continent were forbidden, under threat of death, from growing one of the most nutritious plants on Earth. Fields were torched without warning by soldiers carrying out imperial decrees. Seeds were hunted down and destroyed with methodical precision. Those who dared to cultivate this crop faced punishments so severe that entire communities abandoned their agricultural heritage overnight, watching generations of accumulated knowledge slip away into enforced silence. This is not a story from some distant, forgotten civilization lost to the mists of time. This happened in the Americas, within recorded history, and the consequences rippled through centuries of human experience. The plant at the center of this extraordinary suppression is amaranth, and its journey from sacred grain to forbidden crop to modern superfood reveals one of the most dramatic stories of colonial control, indigenous resistance, and scientific rediscovery ever recorded in the annals of agricultural history. Long before European ships appeared on the horizon, amaranth had already sustained civilizations for thousands of years. Species belonging to the genus Amaranthus have been cultivated for their grains for approximately 8,000 years, making it one of the oldest food crops known to humanity, predating written language itself. The Aztecs called it huautli, and they revered it not merely as sustenance, but as something far more profound, a bridge between the earthly and the divine. This small-seeded plant became so sacred, so deeply woven into the spiritual and physical fabric of Mesoamerican life, that its eventual prohibition would require the full force of an empire to enforce. The relationship between the Aztec people and their amaranth was not merely agricultural. It was spiritual, cultural, and deeply personal in ways that the arriving Europeans would never fully comprehend. Amaranth was cultivated alongside corn and beans as a dietary cornerstone of Mesoamerican civilization. Together, these three crops formed a nutritional trinity that sustained millions of people across what is now Mexico and Central America, providing complementary proteins and nutrients that kept populations healthy and strong. But amaranth held a special place that transcended mere nutrition. The Aztecs developed intricate ceremonies around this grain, treating it with a reverence that would ultimately seal its fate in the centuries to come. They would toast amaranth seeds over open flames until they popped like tiny explosions of white, then mix them with honey, or sometimes with sacrificial blood, to form a special sacred dough called huautli. From this sacred dough, priests and artisans would shape elaborate idols of Huitzilopochtli, the fearsome war god whose name translates to hummingbird of the left, a deity of sun and battle who demanded devotion from his followers. These amaranth figures were carried through the streets during festivals, worshipped by thousands of faithful believers, and then ceremonially broken apart and consumed by the faithful. In eating the god made from grain, the people believed they were binding themselves to the divine, participating in a sacred communion that gave meaning to their existence and purpose to their lives. When Spanish conquistadors arrived with Hernán Cortés in the 16th century, they encountered amaranth rituals with a mixture of horror, fascination, and calculated opportunity. The sight of indigenous people creating effigies from grain and consuming them in religious ceremonies struck the Spanish as a perverse mockery of the Catholic Eucharist, a demonic parody of their own sacred traditions. Whether this interpretation was genuine theological concern or a convenient justification for what would follow remains debated by historians to this day. What is not debated, what the historical record makes abundantly clear, is what happened next. The Spanish saw these ceremonies as pagan threats to Christianity and, perhaps more importantly, to the colonial control they were determined to establish over these new territories. A people united by their own sacred food, their own religious traditions, their own agricultural independence, represented a population that would be extraordinarily difficult to subjugate completely. The amaranth had to be destroyed. Hernán Cortés himself reportedly declared that he would cut the hands of those who planted amaranth. This was not an idle threat made for dramatic effect, but a promise backed by the full military and administrative power of the Spanish colonial apparatus. Across Mexico, amaranth fields were systematically burned, the flames consuming in hours what had taken seasons to grow. Spanish soldiers and colonial administrators hunted for hidden caches of seeds with the same intensity they applied to searching for gold and silver, understanding that controlling food meant controlling people. Cultivators faced cruel punishments, including execution for the crime of growing or saving seeds of this forbidden plant. Families were torn apart, communities devastated, and an entire agricultural tradition driven underground by the threat of violence that hung over every planting season for generations. The suppression was thorough and relentless, spanning generations and covering vast territories. But the motivations were not purely religious. The Spanish feared that amaranth could replace wheat, which was heavily taxed and controlled by colonial authorities. Indigenous agricultural independence represented a threat to the economic machinery of empire. By destroying amaranth and forcing dependence on European crops, the colonizers could maintain both spiritual and material domination over the conquered peoples. This was not just religious persecution, but a calculated strategy of economic and political domination disguised in the language of saving souls. But amaranth did not entirely disappear. Despite centuries of brutal enforcement, despite the burning of fields and the killing of cultivators, the grain survived. For generations, it became perhaps the best-kept secret in Mesoamerica. Indigenous farmers grew the plant in secret locations, hidden in remote mountain valleys, disguised among other crops, and cultivated in small plots where Spanish eyes rarely ventured. Seed savers protected precious caches and passed them through family lines like treasured heirlooms, which indeed they were. Grandmothers taught granddaughters which seeds to save and where to hide them. The knowledge passed through whispered conversations and careful demonstrations, an underground network of agricultural resistance that spanned centuries. The plant itself proved remarkably difficult to eradicate completely. Amaranth survived as a weed in fields and along roadsides, maintaining its genetic diversity even when deliberate cultivation was impossible. The same hardiness that made it valuable as a crop made it nearly impossible to eliminate from the landscape entirely. Today, Mexicans still make alegria, a sticky amaranth sweet whose name means joy. This treat appears during Day of the Dead celebrations, a living reminder of what was nearly lost. The crop remained a symbol of resistance against Spanish cultural and culinary domination, a small act of defiance passed down through generations until the world was finally ready to understand what had been suppressed. What makes amaranth worth such extraordinary efforts at both suppression and preservation? The answer lies in its remarkable nutritional profile, which modern science has only recently begun to fully appreciate. Amaranth grain contains between 16 and 18% protein, making it superior to traditional cereals like wheat, rice, and corn. According to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, it packs more protein than any other plant on Earth. But the quantity of protein is only part of the story. Amaranth contains all 9 essential amino acids, including lysine and tryptophan, which are typically lacking in other grains. This makes it a complete protein source, extraordinarily rare in the plant kingdom and invaluable for populations that depend primarily on plant-based nutrition. The nutritional treasures do not stop at protein. Amaranth is a source of vitamin C, iron, beta-carotene, calcium, and folic acid. The grain contains powerful antioxidants including gallic acid and vanillic acid, compounds that help protect cells from damage and may reduce the risk of chronic diseases. Perhaps most remarkably, amaranth oil is the richest plant-based source of squalene, a compound traditionally harvested from shark livers. Squalene has demonstrated anti-inflammatory properties, liver-protecting effects, and cholesterol-regulating capabilities that have attracted significant medical research interest. For people with celiac disease or gluten sensitivity, amaranth offers another crucial advantage. It is completely gluten-free, providing a nutritious alternative to wheat-based foods without any of the digestive complications that affect millions of people worldwide. The modern rediscovery of amaranth began quietly in the 1970s, when researchers in the United States started investigating this forgotten grain. By the end of that decade, a few thousand acres were being cultivated in America, a modest beginning, but one that would grow significantly. In 1975, the United States National Academy of Sciences published a landmark assessment declaring amaranth a crop with superiority and agricultural potential worthy of major development. The scientific establishment had officially recognized what indigenous peoples had known for millennia. Even NASA took notice, selecting amaranth as part of astronaut diets for space missions. The grain continues to be studied for space farming applications due to its remarkable resilience and nutritional density. A food that was once banned by conquistadors may one day sustain human colonies on Mars. Perhaps amaranth's most compelling modern relevance lies in its extraordinary potential to address climate change and global food security, challenges that will define the coming century. The grain possesses a wide genetic pool and demonstrates an exceptional capacity to tolerate drought stress that would wither other crops. It is highly efficient in its use of water, requiring far less irrigation than conventional grains, and it responds remarkably well to low carbon availability in the atmosphere. It demonstrates high tolerance for drought, saline soils, and even frost conditions that would devastate other crops completely. Amaranth thrives in temperatures up to 42 degrees Celsius, making it suitable for regions where climate change is pushing traditional crops beyond their limits and threatening food supplies for millions. In southern Africa, grain amaranth is being actively adopted to combat the frequent droughts that threaten food supplies across the region, offering hope to farmers who have watched traditional crops fail year after year. With projections suggesting we must produce 70% more food to feed 9 billion people by 2050, all while dealing with increasingly unpredictable weather patterns and degraded soils, climate-resilient crops like amaranth are no longer merely interesting alternatives, but potentially essential components of global food security strategies. The name amaranth itself carries profound meaning that resonates across cultures and centuries. It derives from the Greek word meaning the never fading, or one that does not wither, a name that seems almost prophetic given the grain's remarkable survival. The ancient Greeks used it as a symbol of immortality, decorating images of their gods and adorning tombs with representations of this unfading plant. How fitting, how extraordinarily appropriate that a grain once sentenced to extinction by colonial powers now offers solutions to the food crises of our modern age. The Spanish Empire that tried to eradicate it with fire and sword has long since crumbled into history, while the tiny seeds that farmers protected through centuries of persecution continue to multiply across fields on every inhabited continent. There is a profound lesson in this story that extends far beyond nutrition and agriculture, one that speaks to the resilience of both plants and peoples. The knowledge of where these seeds come from, the history they carry within their genetic code, must not be forgotten. Indigenous people preserved this superfood through centuries of active suppression, hiding it in remote mountain valleys, protecting it in secret gardens, passing it down through generations at great personal risk and tremendous sacrifice. They recognized something in this humble plant that colonizers were too blinded by ideology, greed, and religious fervor to see. What those conquerors tried to destroy with fire and punishment and death, what they attempted to erase from the very landscape, the earth continues to provide. Every time someone eats amaranth today, whether in a health food store in New York or a village market in Oaxaca, they participate in a tradition that stretches back 8,000 years and forward into an uncertain future where such resilient, nutritious foods may prove absolutely essential to human survival. The never-fading grain has outlasted its persecutors, and its extraordinary story of suppression, survival, and rediscovery offers hope that wisdom, once preserved by those courageous enough to protect it, can never be fully extinguished from this world.